They told you trust was sacred, that to be good, you must open yourself, to love, to loyalty, to faith in the people around you. That trust is the foundation of all relationships, that without it, we're nothing. But what if the opposite is true? What if trust isn't the glue that binds us, but the leash that tames us? What if trust is not a virtue, but a vulnerability exploited by the ones who smile as they sharpen the knife? Let's say you're loyal. You keep promises. You stand by people. You believe in second chances. But what happens when the people you trust don't do the same? What happens when that loyalty becomes your prison? When your decency becomes their weapon? Somewhere, someone is sitting in silence, ruined for telling the truth. A whistleblower who trusted the system. A best friend abandoned for speaking up. A partner cheated on after giving everything. They all believed that trust would protect them, and instead, it destroyed them. Because here's what no one wants to admit. Trust makes you predictable. And in a world ruled by self-interest, predictability is death. The more someone knows you'll stay, the more they believe they can leave. The more someone knows you'll forgive, the more they allow themselves to harm. And the more you believe in blind trust, the more you become blind to manipulation. It's a hard truth, but it's one you must face. The very thing you were told would make you strong might be the reason you're broken. Machiavelli warned us, in a world of wolves, the sheep who trusts dies first. He saw the world not through the lens of how it should be, but how it is. He understood that people are not driven by honor or love, but by gain, fear, and survival. And when those motives conflict with your loyalty, they will not hesitate to abandon you. So ask yourself, why do you expect loyalty in a world built on utility? Why do you place your heart in hands that are only reaching to take? They sold you a lie. That trust is the highest virtue. But they never told you who profits from that lie. Parents, partners, employers, leaders, they all teach obedience masked as trust. Just trust me, they say. What they really mean is, surrender your judgment, lower your guard, give me the power. But the truth? Trust is not something you owe. It is something that must be earned again and again. And even then, it must be watched. Because once they have your trust, they don't need your permission. They already own the part of you that questions. So if you've ever been betrayed and then blamed yourself, if you've ever asked, why didn't I see it coming? How could they do this to me? Understand this. It's not your fault for trusting. It's your tragedy for not being taught what trust truly is. This isn't about becoming bitter. This isn't about closing off the world. It's about waking up. It's about learning that not everyone deserves your openness, your belief, your inner world. Trust isn't a gift, it's a wager. And if you don't know the rules, you'll always lose. But to understand this truth, we must look at the man who dared to write what others were too afraid to admit. Machiavelli. When Niccolò Machiavelli wrote The Prince, he wasn't offering advice to the average man. He was writing a survival manual for rulers trapped in a world soaked in blood, betrayal, and ambition. A world not unlike our own, only less polite in hiding its violence. In the early 1500s, Italy wasn't a unified nation. It was a battlefield, a chaotic mess of city-states constantly tearing each other apart in the pursuit of power. Florence, Milan, Venice, Naples, the Papal States, all shifting alliances, all stabbing each other in the back before the ink on their treaties even dried. Machiavelli lived through this turbulence. He saw leaders rise on the promises of peace and fall at the hands of people they once trusted. He watched the fragile nature of loyalty disintegrate when convenience knocked at the door. So he stopped pretending. He stripped away the illusions. And he wrote the truth, not the one we like, but the one we live. Men are ungrateful, fickle, liars, and deceivers. This wasn't pessimism. It was observation. Machiavelli understood human beings as creatures of self-interest, not monsters, not saints, just animals driven by survival, gain, and fear. He didn't romanticize loyalty or honesty because he knew both had a price tag, and once that price was paid, they disappeared. A prudent ruler cannot and must not keep his word when doing so is against his interest. This is the sentence that shocked the world, and still does. Because we're raised to believe the opposite, that keeping your word is a matter of honor. But Machiavelli saw it differently. If keeping your promise gets you killed, is that virtue or stupidity? He wasn't telling leaders to lie. He was warning them, others will. And if you don't understand that, you'll be betrayed by those who do. It is better to be feared than loved. This is not a call for cruelty. It's a calculus. Love is fleeting. Fear is reliable. Love can be lost. Fear stays in place when love wavers. Machiavelli saw that when power is at stake, love can't protect you. Fear can. He wasn't glorifying tyranny. He was documenting its logic. In a world where enemies don't announce themselves and allies vanish when storms come, fear is a stronger shield than affection. Take Cesare Borgia, the man Machiavelli admired as the ideal prince. Borgia was charismatic, ruthless, and cunning. He unified central Italy through charm, deception, and calculated violence. He used mercy when it served him, and cruelty when it didn't. He betrayed allies, made promises he never kept, and maintained control by never giving anyone full access to his thoughts. Machiavelli didn't worship him. He studied him. He understood that Borgia survived longer than others because he didn't trust like others. Now fast forward 5 centuries. Do you think the game has changed? Look at the corporate world, where promotions are promised and then withheld. Where "we're a family" means you'll work overtime for free. Where loyalty is rewarded with silence and speaking out gets you fired. Look at politics, where alliances are temporary masks and loyalty is a slogan used to buy silence. Look at your own life, where people pledge forever and mean it only until their priorities shift. Where "I would never hurt you" is often the prelude to pain. This is why people hate Machiavelli. Not because he's wrong, but because he's right. Brutally, uncomfortably right. He didn't tell us how we should behave. He told us how we do behave, when no one's watching. He shattered the pretty lies we use to decorate our betrayals. And for that, he was branded as evil. But Machiavelli wasn't a villain. He was the mirror. The man willing to say out loud what everyone whispers to themselves after being betrayed. The man who knew that trusting blindly isn't noble. It's suicidal. And that in a world ruled by appearances, only those who see behind the masks survive. So if betrayal is inevitable, how do you protect yourself? You start by understanding how trust is weaponized. Trust feels good, doesn't it? It offers relief. The comfort of not having to second-guess, overanalyze, or scan every word for hidden meanings. It's a shortcut to safety. The illusion that someone else will carry your emotional weight without letting it crash to the floor. But what if that very feeling is the trap? Your mind is wired for connection. It's not a flaw. It's biology. From birth, we depend on others. We learn that being liked keeps us safe, that smiling earns approval, that agreeing avoids punishment. So we begin to trust, not because it's earned, but because not trusting makes life too painful. And predators know this. Narcissists, manipulators, cult leaders, sales teams, even those closest to you, who learn to mirror your emotions not because they feel them, but because they know you do. They study your kindness, they memorize your insecurities, they weaponize your empathy, and they use one of the most effective tools in psychological warfare: familiarity. They don't scare you into trusting them. They soothe you into it. They say what you want to hear. They pretend to reflect your values. They mirror your pain, your language, your rhythm. And before you know it, you're not thinking. You're surrendering. This isn't always malicious. Sometimes it's unconscious. But the result is the same. You give too much, too soon, to someone who hasn't earned it. Think about toxic relationships. At first, they feel like fate. Compliments flood in. Boundaries dissolve. You're seen, understood, adored. It's called love bombing. And it's not love. It's bait. Or think about corporations. The posters on the wall say, "We're a family." The emails say, "We care." But when profits dip, you're disposable. Or even closer to home, family, friends, communities. They condition you to trust roles instead of reality. She's your mother. Of course she loves you. He's your best friend. He'd never lie to you. But love is not guaranteed by title. And betrayal often hides in the people you've known the longest, because they're the ones you stop watching. Psychologically, your mind is not neutral. It's biased, deeply. 3 cognitive glitches play a massive role in why trust is so easy to manipulate. Reciprocity bias. When someone gives you something, a compliment, a favor, a gift, you feel pressure to return the gesture, even if it's not genuine, even if it's calculated. You confuse kindness for character. The halo effect. When someone is good at one thing, your brain assumes they're good at everything. They're attractive, so they must be honest. They're confident, so they must be competent. And when they betray you, you feel stupid. But it's not stupidity. It's human design being hijacked. Confirmation. Bias. Once you believe someone is good, your brain filters out the evidence to the contrary. You excuse red flags. You rationalize pain. You say, "They didn't mean it," when they absolutely did. And here's the question no one asks. Do you trust people because they've earned it, or because you fear what it would mean if you didn't? Because to not trust means to be alone, to question the people you love, to see the world as unsafe. And that terrifies most people more than betrayal ever could. But let's pause for a second. If this is resonating with your life, if you've ever felt like your kindness was turned against you, if your openness became the entry point for manipulation, leave a comment. I want to know your story. Your words might help someone else wake up. And if this is hitting hard, hit the like button. It helps this truth travel further to those still stuck in the illusion of safety, because the world will keep telling you to trust, to let your guard down, to stay soft. But softness without awareness is surrender, and trust without discernment is self-betrayal. But trust isn't just about others. There's a more dangerous betrayal, one that happens silently every day. We talk a lot about betrayal, but mostly the kind that comes from others. The friend who vanishes when you need them most. The partner who cheats and pretends it never happened. The mentor who praises you in public and undermines you in silence. But there's a more devastating betrayal. The one you carry every day. The one you never see because it wears your face. Self-betrayal. You've convinced yourself they didn't mean it. You've silenced your instincts again and again. You've excused behavior that broke you just to protect the fantasy you weren't ready to let go of. You ignored the red flags, not because you didn't see them, but because you didn't want to lose the story you were telling yourself, that they loved you, that they cared, that they would change. But deep down, you knew. You always knew. And yet, you stayed. You rationalized. You made peace with chaos just to avoid facing the silence of truth. This is what betrayal looks like when you're the one committing it. Carl Jung called it the shadow, the hidden parts of ourselves we bury because they don't fit the image we want to believe. Your anger, your envy, your desperation to be wanted, your craving to be saved. They live in the dark corners of your psyche, shaping decisions you think are logical, but are really emotional echoes of wounds you never confronted. When you trust someone to complete you, when you chase validation because you can't sit alone, when you project your worth onto their approval, you're not just trusting them. You're outsourcing your survival. You're saying, "I don't know how to hold myself, so please don't drop me." But people drop you, not always because they're cruel. Sometimes because they were never meant to carry that weight. Sometimes because they're broken too. And sometimes because they sensed, even if unconsciously, that you didn't trust yourself. So you placed your faith in them like a fragile offering. And then, when they leave, you collapse. You say, "I was betrayed." But ask yourself, by whom? What if you've been the accomplice to your own heartbreak? What if the first betrayal was internal? You believed what was convenient. You ignored what was inconvenient. You chose comfort over clarity and called it hope. This is the hardest truth. You can't truly trust others if you haven't first confronted the ways you deceive yourself. You wear masks, not just for the world, but for yourself. You say I'm fine when you're drowning. You say I deserve love, but accept cruelty. You say I'm strong, but beg for someone else to give you meaning. And this creates a dangerous dynamic, because manipulators don't prey on your strength. They prey on your unacknowledged weakness. They sense your need. They sense your guilt. They sense your silence. They don't seduce the part of you that sees clearly. They seduce the part of you that refuses to see at all. Nietzsche once said, "I'm not upset that you lied to me. I'm upset that from now on, I can't believe you." But what happens when that lie comes from within? When you tell yourself someone's words matter more than their actions? When you justify being mistreated because they had a rough childhood? When you defend their betrayal as your own failure to love properly? That's not compassion. That's self-erasure. The path out of this isn't easy. It starts with something most people never do: sitting with the parts of yourself you hate. The neediness, the rage, the jealousy, the fragility, the loneliness. Not to destroy them, but to understand them. Because the moment you stop fighting your shadow, you begin to see it clearly. And once you see your own shadow, you begin to see it in others. Suddenly the charm looks hollow. The apologies feel scripted. The warmth feels rehearsed. You no longer fall for smiles. You read eyes. You no longer trust the performance. You observe the patterns. And in that moment, something shatters. The illusion of trust dissolves, not into bitterness, but into vision. You become dangerous, not because you hurt others, but because you can no longer be fooled by them. Now that the illusion has shattered, the question becomes clear. How do you live in a world where trust is a weapon, where every smile might hide a motive, where every promise might come with a price? The answer isn't to become cold. It's to become clear. This world, this system of human interaction, is built on masks. Everyone wears one, some to protect, some to deceive, and some because they've forgotten their real face. So the first rule is this: see the mask, but never forget it's a mask. Don't hate it, don't tear it off, just don't mistake it for the person beneath it. Machiavelli understood this better than most. He lived in a world where a misplaced word could cost you your head. He watched kings and commoners both fall victim to appearances. He knew survival didn't belong to the most moral. It belonged to the most aware. So what did he advise? Never reveal your full intentions. Say less than you think. Let others assume they understand you, then watch what they reveal in their comfort. Judge actions, not words. Talk is currency in this world, cheap and easily forged. Anyone can say the right thing. Only patterns tell the truth. Respect everyone. Trust few. This isn't paranoia. It's self-preservation. Being kind doesn't mean being blind. You can treat others with dignity without giving them access to your soul. Use selective vulnerability. Not every emotion needs a witness. Not every thought needs an audience. Real strength isn't in oversharing. It's in choosing who earns your softness. This is what we call controlled paranoia. Not fear, not hostility, but alertness. The understanding that while not everyone is out to harm you, not everyone is out to help you either. And many simply don't care what happens to you, as long as they get what they want. This isn't about becoming cynical. It's about becoming strategic. Because trust, in this world, is not an emotion. It's a tool. something you use with precision, not abandon. You test it, you measure it, you deploy it carefully, like a general moving pieces on a board, not a child hoping for safety in every smile. And here's the shift that changes everything. You stop viewing trust as connection and start viewing it as leverage. That might sound cold, but consider this. If you walk into a room needing people to like you, you've already surrendered. You've already given them power over your peace. But if you walk in with nothing to prove, if you walk in with your identity intact, with solitude as your sanctuary, and your clarity sharper than their charm, then you don't need to trust them. You need only to observe them. This is what we call spiritual detachment, not in a religious sense, but in the sense of learning to be whole within yourself. When you stop craving validation, when you stop needing others to affirm your worth, you become untouchable. You begin to see people not as saviors or enemies, but as reflections. Information, data, you watch, you learn, you adapt. And most importantly, you stop outsourcing your emotional stability. Because here's the truth. You don't need to hate people to stop trusting them. You simply need to stop handing them the keys to your peace. That's not bitterness. That's sovereignty. People will still disappoint you. They will still lie. They will still wear masks. But now, you'll see it. You'll expect it. And because of that, you won't be broken by it. This isn't isolation. This is liberation. You can still love, still care, still connect. But now you do it consciously, not desperately. You give what you can afford to lose. And you never again mistake closeness for loyalty. This is how you navigate a world without trust. You build yourself into something no one else can control. A mind that sees clearly. A heart that feels deeply, but never blindly. A soul that remains rooted no matter who comes or goes. Because when you stop needing people to be who you want them to be, you begin to see them for who they are. And that is freedom. But what if you could go even deeper? What if you could take every wound, every betrayal, every disappointment, and use it to become something more, something unbreakable? Somewhere along the way, someone shattered you, not with fists, not with cruelty, but with kindness, just enough to make you lower your guard, with warmth, just enough to make you step closer, and then with silence, with absence, with betrayal. They left, not always physically, but emotionally. They made you question yourself, not just what you did, but who you are. And you kept asking, why didn't I see it? Was I too naive? Did I deserve this? But maybe you weren't naive. Maybe you weren't stupid. Maybe you were simply good. In a world that doesn't know what to do with goodness unless it can twist it into weakness. Because the truth is, the world doesn't reward innocence. It studies it, it tests it, it consumes it. And when it's done, it spits it out and calls you too sensitive. But that's not a flaw. That's your gift, one that needs protection, not shame. You thought being open meant being safe. You thought giving more would make people stay. You thought trust was the highest form of love. And for that, you paid the price. But hear this clearly. That betrayal, that heartbreak, that emotional ambush you still carry in your nervous system, it wasn't your destruction. It was your initiation. Because only when something precious breaks, do you finally examine what you built around it. Only when your blind trust collapses, do you start seeing clearly. And once you see, you can't unsee. You begin to notice the subtle shift in tone when someone's lying. You pick up on the hesitation before the half-truth. You watch the patterns repeat, not because you're paranoid, but because you've been trained by pain. Clarity becomes your gift, not because you wanted it, but because life gave you no choice. And now, you're done. Not bitter, not broken, just awake. Awake to the masks people wear. Awake to the games they play. Awake to your own blind spots. The parts of you that wanted to believe, even when belief was burning you. You used to think your instincts were overreactions. You used to second-guess your discomfort. You used to gaslight yourself into submission. But now you know. That discomfort, that tension, that tiny flicker of fear that passed through you like a shadow in the room, that was your clarity trying to speak. You drowned it in hope. You silenced it with kindness. You overrode it with a fantasy that maybe, just maybe, they meant well. But they didn't. Or maybe they did, and simply didn't care enough to stop hurting you. Either way, the outcome was the same. You were left picking up the pieces of a trust that never belonged where you placed it. And that realization, that's when the transformation begins. Because once you've been burned, once you've watched the illusion turn to ash in your hands, you stop needing to trust people. Not in the traditional sense. Not in the desperate, wide-eyed, please don't leave me way. You start trusting yourself. You trust your vision, your ability to read energy, to see past charm, to recognize patterns the first time. You trust your silence. The words you no longer say. The arguments you don't engage in. The need to defend yourself fades because you realize those who matter don't need explanations, and those who demand them are often just trying to manipulate the narrative. You trust your edge, that sharp, quiet boundary that no longer needs to scream, no. It simply is, and it doesn't move just because someone cries or gets angry. You trust your instincts, the part of you that felt something was off, long before the betrayal, long before the lie, long before the apology that never came. This is what maturity looks like. Not the absence of emotion, but the presence of discernment. Because not everyone who smiles is safe. Not everyone who says, I love you, means it the way you do. Not everyone who shows up has good intentions. And that doesn't make them evil. It makes them human, flawed, wounded, opportunistic. Just like you once. But here's the difference now. You see it. And in that vision, that raw, brutal clarity, you find peace. You stop chasing closure. You stop needing apologies. You stop asking why, because why doesn't matter anymore. What matters is what you do next. You rebuild, not with desperation, but with intention. You give your trust like currency, not like a donation. You spend it only where it's matched in value, and you always keep a reserve for yourself. You walk into rooms no longer needing to be liked, no longer waiting to be understood. You speak less, observe more, and when you do speak, it's with the weight of someone who's died and come back wiser. You don't need to harden your heart. You just need to learn how to protect it. You don't need to push people away. You just need to stop handing them the key to your peace. Because here's the truth. You don't need to trust everyone. You don't even need to trust most people. You only need to trust yourself, your solitude, your silence, your sharpness, your stillness. You don't need more smiles. You need more self-respect. You don't need more connections. You need more discernment. And when that becomes your standard, you stop asking for the world to be honest and start building a life that doesn't depend on it. The betrayal didn't break you. It burned away the parts of you that were still asleep. And what's left now is someone no longer waiting to be saved. Someone who sees. Someone who knows. Because the less you trust, the clearer you see. And the clearer you see, the stronger you become. If this video echoed your truth, share it. Someone you love might be one betrayal away from waking up. Like, comment, and subscribe to Psychra for more dark clarity. This isn't just content, it's psychological armor.